In sports, taunting an opposing player is generally something that's frowned at. When the taunter ends up eating his words or actions, however, it's laughed at. Here are 10 times athletes taunted their opponents and got owned. We promise to never taunt you as long as you follow the Sportster on YouTube. To do so, simply hit the subscribe button now. Throw a booker at him. Anthony Hembrick was once a promising young boxer, a member of the 1988 U.S. Olympic team and a former light heavyweight champion several times over, but his first professional loss was one he'd definitely like to forget. After winning his first 14 bouts in a row, Hembrick was matched up with fellow countryman Booker T. Word on June 12, 1990 in North Carolina. During his introduction, Hembrick was clearly way too confident as he showcased an elaborate choreographed dance routine that lasted nearly a full minute and involved all 3 members of his corner. Based on the fight's result, it was clear that Hembrick should have spent more time practicing his boxing moves rather than his dance moves. As soon as the bell rang, Hembrick slipped down to a knee in a puddle of water likely created during his introduction. And this bad omen was just the beginning. Once he was finally able to engage his opponent, Booker T easily knocked him down twice in the first 2.5 minutes. With only 22 seconds left in the first round, Hembrick assured the official that he was okay, before immediately getting flattened by a single punch from Word. Just like that, the fight was over, and so was Hembrick's undefeated streak. Look who's choking now. Everyone knows superstar shooting guard Reggie Miller, as the former Indiana Pacers, now a Hall of Famer who earned 5 All-Star selections, scored nearly 26,000 points, and ranked second all-time in career three-pointers. However, 2 decades ago, he was still trying to make a name for himself for the first time during the 1994 NBA playoffs. He succeeded in this, but not in the way he envisioned. In the Eastern Conference Finals against the Knicks, Miller exploded in Game 5 by scoring 39 points, including 25 in the fourth quarter alone. Toward the end of the 93-86 victory that would give the Pacers a 3-2 series lead, Miller began using some animated taunts, including flashing the number 4 with his fingers and miming choking in the direction of the New York bench and longtime Knicks fan Spike Lee, who of course had courtside seats. The taunt was so over the top that Lee actually appealed to an official to give Miller a foul. Lee didn't win that battle, but in the end, it wouldn't matter. The Indiana Pacers would go on to drop the next 2 games and get eliminated, while New York made it all the way to Game 7 of the finals. Bell gets his bells rung. Kerwin Bell was a successful college quarterback for the Florida Gators who was named SEC Player of the Year in 1984. In his professional career, Bell split his 13 years between the National Football League and Canadian Football League and found moderate success in each. You might not recognize Kerwin's name, but you've probably seen one of his most memorable highlights, which was unfortunately not the kind of play one wants to be remembered for. As a member of the Toronto Argonauts in 2000, Bell flaked a handoff and instead ran for a 13-yard touchdown. Upon scoring, he spiked the ball in front of him in celebration, only to have it bounce back up and hit him directly in the groin as if he was on an episode of America's Funniest Home Videos, or maybe Canada's Funniest Home Videos. Making matters worse, Bell was talking trash to an opposing player during the spike, and as soon as it took an unfortunate bounce, he was simultaneously shoved in the face by the victim of his insults. But the fun wasn't over yet. The shove caused Bell to tumble to the ground and knock over a different opposing player, who accidentally sat on Bell's head when he fell. Even the announcers couldn't keep it together after this one. Famous last words. When the 2003 NFC wildcard playoff game between the Seattle Seahawks and Green Bay Packers went into overtime, the 2 teams met at the 50-yard line for a coin toss, as usual. The Hawks called heads, and heads it was, and Seattle opted to receive and get the ball first. However, this development didn't need to be reported by the announcers, as the referees had been mic'd up for the toss. So when Seattle quarterback Matt Hasselbeck confidently stated that we want the ball and we're gonna score, it wasn't just heard by the officials and the opposing Packers players, it was also heard by television audiences around the world, as well as the 81,000 fans in attendance at Green Bay's Lambeau Field. Hasselbeck was right about scoring, he just got the team wrong. On Seattle's 6th play of their second possession, Hasselbeck threw a pass that was intercepted by cornerback Al Harris, who ran it back 52 yards for a touchdown in a 33-27 Packers victory. As the defeated QB solemnly exited the field, Joe Buck commented that many of the headlines will talk about what he said at the coin flip, and of course, that's exactly what happened. A floundering promise. Swimming might not be a sport where you'd expect to hear a lot of trash talk, but that didn't stop French swimmer Elaine Bernard from making some pretty big promises prior to an event at the 2008 Summer Olympic Games in Beijing. When questioned about his team's chances against the good old United States of America in the men's 4x100 meter relay, Bernard said to a French newspaper, "The Americans, we will smash them. That's what we came here for." If you don't recall what unfolded next, we'll sum it up by saying that American swimmer Jason Lezick's fingers touched the finishing wall 0.08 seconds before Bernard's, and thus they took home the gold at the event. Not only that, but Lezick completed the final leg in 46.06 seconds, which broke the previous world record held by, you guessed it, Alain Bernard. As if this single race wasn't embarrassing enough for the French team, they only ended up leaving the games in 9th place with a total of 6 medals, 1 gold, 2 silvers, and a bronze. The Americans, thanks in part to the prowess of one Michael Phelps, left the games with a total of 31 medals, 12 of which were gold. Let's take a break from all this owning for a quiz question. Which notorious loudmouth NFL player famously desecrated the Dallas Cowboys on-field star logo during 2 of his touchdown celebrations, only to later get traded to the team? Hang out until the end of the video for the answer. Take a knee. Some folks just never learn. Before even facing famed UFC champion Anderson Silva at UFC 117 on August 7, 2010, fellow MMA fighter Chael Sonnen was full of confidence, saying among numerous other things that Silva is no more real than the Loch Ness Monster. To his credit, Silva stayed relatively quiet and let his body do the talking, as he eventually made Sonnen tap out in the final round thanks to a triangle armbar. Adding insult to injury, Sonnen was tested for PEDs immediately after the bout and was found to have extremely high, artificially inflated testosterone levels. Still, he didn't learn his lesson, and 14 months later, Sonnen was taunting Silva once again, even more explicitly this time. "Anderson Silva, you absolutely suck," Sonnen said before challenging the fighter to a rematch that eventually occurred at UFC 148 on July 7, 2012, even going as far as to stake his entire career upon winning it. Although Sonnen controlled most of the bout, he was unable to weaken Silva, who eventually took him down with a knee strike and several punches for the TKO victory at 155 of the second round. In case you were wondering, Sonnen went back on his word and didn't retire after UFC 148 and is still active today. The longest yard. Whether your taunt is grand or subtle, it's best to at least wait until you actually score before performing it. The University of Utah football team learned that the hard way on November 8, 2014. During a game against the Oregon Ducks, Utah wide receiver Kalen Clay caught a pass from backup quarterback Travis Wilson and turned it into a 79-yard touchdown. Or did he? At the end of Clay's run, he actually started celebrating prematurely and dropped the ball on the 1-yard line, just shy of the end zone. While Utah's players and fans were both celebrating what they thought was a 13-0 lead, Oregon linebacker Joe Walker observantly noticed that the referees never signaled a touchdown, picking up the ball and proceeded to run it all the way back for a 100-yard touchdown. They tied the game at 7 after an extra point. However, when you consider the 78-yard play by Utah that started the whole thing, it was actually more like 178 yards. This play wasn't inconsequential by any means and actually changed the entire momentum of the game. Oregon ended up dominating the rest of the way and eventually won by a score of 51-27. Fool me twice. For this next example, we're not sure if we've ever seen so much showboating in a boxing match, let alone one where the showboater ended up getting owned. After losing to Sugar Shane Mosley once before in a 12-round 2008 knockout, the always cocky Ricardo Mayorga faced him again on August 29, 2015. For a guy who was out for both revenge and redemption, Mayorga was being entirely too cocky during the entire rematch. In round 3, he was seen talking trash and openly allowing Mosley to land several blows numerous times and continued to taunt his opponent and beckon him closer. At one point, Mayorga even spread his arms wide, gestured toward his groin with both hands, and opened up his hands once again. However, 3 rounds later, both fighters appeared to be tiring. After one final and brief exchange, Mayorga fell to his knees and couldn't stand back up. It was clear that Ricardo was asking the official to acknowledge a low blow by Mosley, but the referee refused, and replays show no illegal contact. After this embarrassing defeat, Mayorga only fought one more time, a victory against Hadiel Zepeda, and retired in early 2017 with a career record of 26-6-1. The greatest fraud. If you're going to imitate the greatest boxer of all time, aka the greatest himself, Muhammad Ali, you better be able to back it up. One person who couldn't do that was mixed martial artist Joe Harding during his interim featherweight title fight against Johan Segas at the British Challenge MMA 18 event in England back in February 2017. Harding landed a kick and a jab, and after showboating a bit by winding up his right hand and quickly landing another jab with his left, Harding broke into a dance move that resembled the Ali Shuffle, Cassius Clay's famous in-ring jig. However, Segas wasn't the one to stand around to watch the show, especially when it was performed at his expense, and he quickly retaliated with a high left leg kick that caught Harding square on the right side of his head and knocked him to the ground. While the taunter laid flat on his back, Segas got in a few more shots to the face with his right hand before the fight was called, and Segas was declared the winner. Given the fact that Harding wasn't even looking at his opponent when he busted a move he literally never saw the defeat coming. Holm Sweet Holm. You remember Holly Holm, right? She was the underdog UFC fighter who famously faced defending bantamweight champion Ronda Rousey and introduced her to the mat in just the second round of UFC 193's main event on November 14, 2015. Well, that finale was no fluke, as Holm holds a lifetime combined record of 46-6 in boxing, kickboxing, and mixed martial arts. After losing 3 bouts in a row, including the featherweight championship via controversial unanimous decision at UFC 208 in February 2017, Holm returned to the bantamweight division to face Beth Correia at UFC Fight Night on June 17. Although the fighters began the match so timidly that they were admonished by referee Mark Goddard early in the second round, things quickly heated up in the third when Correia dropped her gloves and beckoned her opponent over multiple times. However, Holly is not the type of person anyone should be challenging. Holm moved in and instantly landed a left high kick to Correia's cranium, knocking her down. The preacher's daughter then connected again with a left hand before the ref could show up, leaving Correia down on the mat in a daze and sealing Holm's first win since the Rousey match. As a member of the San Francisco 49ers, wide receiver Terrell Owens performed touchdown celebrations on the Cowboys star logo twice in a single game in 2000 and got shoved by Cowboys safety George Teague the second time. 6 years later, T.O. suited up for Dallas where he spent 3 seasons. Well, did we miss any famous instances of taunting athletes getting owned? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like and share this video. For more sports action, follow the Sportster on YouTube.